So when one of the books, Carte Blanche, is written by Jeffrey Deaver, and it was written in like the mid 2000s, like we're talking peak 511 era, right? And you are
Yeah.
one chapter into this book, and James Bond is in Afghanistan. He is wearing 511 tactical and OD green head to toe. He has a black leather pancake holster on his, at the 3 o'clock position with a 40 caliber Walther PPS M1 in the holster, and he's got Oakley sunglasses.
Oh my God. So he looks
And
like he just walked out of like, yeah, 511 catalog. Like
yeah,
a
yeah,
dog.
it's. I remember reading that for the first time, and I was like 15, and I was like, what in the hell? It really just throws you out of it. Yeah, and he's like, I'm in concealment. I'm like, dude, you're in the Middle East, and you're wearing I am an operator.
You're listening to the Art and More podcast with your hosts, Nathan and BR. Nathan is a Canadian illustrator with a couple years of military experience, and BR is a British anarchist that moved to the States. Both are passionate shooters and community builders. Together, they run the Seaburn art page. Enjoy the show.
You know, the really autistic part of my brain just really wants to buy a PPK and get it milled for the most ridiculous shit. Like, I want to put an X300 on it. I want to put, like, the biggest, strongest light that I can and, like, an aim point acro. Like a mailbox.
Yeah, by definition, that was literally Walther's April Fool's Day post like 4 years ago.
Did they actually? Because that's
Oh
badass.
yeah,
I would
they
carry
they,
that.
they released they released like a drawing of a PPK with a milled for a dot with a giant compensator on it, a light slapped underneath. It's it was pretty good,
Like,
and
if
it
I could
comes up
waste,
occasionally.
like, Dr. No or something with that, I think my life would be complete.
Yeah, I really feel like you're doing it the right way. It's almost like that really weird Kingsman gun,
Oh, yeah, he had, like,
with a 410 shotgun shell shoved
it's
underneath
like
it. I
a
think it's technically a 12
Tokarev
gauge in the
with an
movie.
underslung.
Yeah, yeah,
What did you think
it's
of
pretty
those movies
special.
anyways? As a diehard Bond fan and, basically James Bond incarnate, what did you think of the Kingsman movies?
I loved it. It's like I told my friends when it came out because they were having a hard time seeing how I would like it, and I'm like, well, it's like Deadpool met Roger Moore's James Bond and had a love child, so it's like perfect. Especially in the middle of the Daniel Craig area where it's very dark and aggressive. Having that like chaotic laughter, it was a really good time.
Yes, I really liked the first one.
Hmm.
The
Yeah,
second
it's
one
kind of
fell
been like
off
a
for me.
downhill kind of slope, and the prequel was super weird.
I didn't even know they made a prequel.
Don't watch it. It's very very weird. It has has Rasputin doing like some oral dude stuff on some dude's thigh for like a solid 2 minutes on like some really weird POV like camera shots. And this was like a movie I saw in the theaters with my friends and my wife, and they all just kind of looked down the row at me, asking what I brought them to.
Oh man, yeah. No, it's like I think that's the same with everything Mark Millar ever writes.
Hmm.
Like the studios will get their hands on it and they'll just bastardize it.
Yeah, yeah. I love the first movie. I mean,
Yeah.
how can you not?
I like the edgy teenager in me grew up reading that guy's comic books and the
Yeah.
original Kingsman comic and all of that. But anyways, not to piss BR off and not introduce you. We have today Caleb, Commando Bond, and also happy Thanksgiving, everyone. We totally fucked the dog having an episode last week. I'm sorry, all of us were doing Thanksgiving things, and now we're here.
Yeah, I'm glad we got able to track each other down to do this, man. It's been a long time
Yes,
coming. We've been
I'm
talking
sorry.
about it
We've tried
back
to
and forth
record,
for a while.
yeah, 3 days in a row, and also like while you're working on your book. Um,
Yeah, no worries there.
am I correct in that book was being published through the same guys who did like the picture books for Larry Vickers, like the
Yeah, it's the exact same team. It's the Headstamp Publishing. So if you're familiar with that photography, that insanely awesome photography that's in the Vickers guides, that's James Rupley,
yeah.
and he's amazing. He's one of the two guys who is kind of part of the day-to-day business operations of Headstamp. It's him and Ian McCollum of Forgotten Weapons.
Oh shit.
So yeah, they're two awesome dudes. Love working with them on this project. I uh, I got out of the industry full time last October, and I'd been wanting to write this book for years. And I went to find out who the heck had been doing the Vickers guides because I told my then fiance, like, I want to do, and I showed her a Vickers guide, this, but with all the things of James Bond. And then I worked in the industry and was pulling crazy hours for a couple of years and just didn't have the time. Um, so I went to look them up, and James happened to already be following me on Instagram. I followed him back really quick, and I'm like, hey, can we talk? I have an idea. We cold pitched like last December, and I was signing a publishing agreement a month later, and here we are. Like we're pushing ahead. We've captured some incredible firearms, and I'm almost done with the manuscript. It's about to go to them for the first heavy rounds of editing to hopefully be out for pre-sale this spring.
That's awesome. Hopefully some of my art made it into there, and the graphic design, so I can shill it.
Yeah, that was really clutch for you to kind of get some of that cool stuff together, especially the Skyfall target. That was one of my favorite things in the world. So that's gonna I don't see any spot where that can't go.
Any sense?
Oh, none at all. Yeah. I paraded around some British military dudes like, we don't know, man.
Yeah, well, like what the fuck is this? I am going to also rag on like the guns in Skyfall were really bad. I'm so sorry, Caleb.
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, if you really want me to get down the rabbit hole, the thing that drives me more mad, this is like, there's two major instances of firearms in the Bond movies that like throw my eye twitching really hard.
Yeah.
Skyfall is one of the two, and specifically because of a script issue.
Yeah.
They introduce the gun, the Walther, as a PPKS. It is not a PPKS. It is a Walther PPK in 7.65 millimeter that has a specialized fake signature grip wrapped around it. All the photos of the prop show a standard PPK mag that fits flush to it. So
okay,
I get people telling me all
your gun autism beat me there.
Yeah, that's the one that drives me mad because I post PPKs and everyone's like, well, you need a PPKS because Bond carried one. I'm like, no, he didn't. He just didn't. Like, you're really taking the British people who wrote the script at face value on the technical side. Like, kudos to armorers and all the hard work that they do. But in that same movie, he also wears leather gloves and activates a biometric scanner grip gun and functions. They actually had to edit the gloves off of Daniel Craig's hands because they thought they'd look really cool in the scene. And then they went back to edit. They're like, oh shit. So they had to CGI his bare skin to make it make sense.
His hands looked really because he had a biometric gun.
Yeah, he had the biometric gun, and they're like, you need to put. He's like, he wore the gloves on the set that day. He's like, it's gonna look so badass to have the gun and the gloves. It's all gonna look right. And they get into post, and they're like, oh shit, like he can't shoot his gun with the gloves on.
Yeah, I didn't actually know that. That's actually a badass little piece of trivia.
Yeah, it gets nerdier than that too.
Yeah. What's the other one? Because I want to complain about my eye twitching.
Yeah, the other one is License to Kill. Love the movie. It gets a lot of hate. Timothy Dalton gets a lot of hate. But the biggest issue I have with that movie is in the beginning of the film, he goes off in a helicopter while in morning dress with the DEA, and they start hunting down the villain and all that to kind of start the film off. And he gets handed a gun by the DEA. And it looks like a Beretta M9, but it's a Taurus. They handed him a Taurus PT92, and then the armorer had the audacity and special features to go off and celebrate how awesome it was. He's like, I intentionally put a Taurus in his hand.
Why?
He didn't really specify. Frame-mounted safeties, I guess. I don't know. All I know is the Taurus PT92 is a James Bond gun. Because of that. And then to add insult to injury, when you get to Casino Royale, that really badass title sequence where it's all illustrated like the playing cards and stuff.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, no, it's great until you see all the guns that are illustrated, and one of them is the Taurus PT92 instead of a Beretta M9. It's like just spitting in your eye if you're looking for it.
Yeah, it's like next Bond comes around, she's going to be like, I don't know, a Hispanic woman with a high point.
Yeah, it's just like let's try to just hurt my feelings as many times as humanly possible.
Yeah, that is really funny. But yes, you can't really hold the British to account for like that kind of thing. I didn't actually notice any of that. I don't think that like my brain isn't quite as honed in on the technical specifications between different kinds of PPK. But I do remember he had like an 11.5 AR of some kind, like a CQBR or some shit, and he had like offset irons that were both put on the handguard. And
you're talking No Time to Die. He had a Mark 18 motto in that movie.
Yeah, and he had
offset irons on a CAC rail.
Yeah, like a Delta Ring quad rail. A lot of people listening
Hmm.
to this are either going to cringe or not have any idea what the fuck I'm talking about. But it was like a super redundant, like only a person who doesn't like he had backup irons and an EOTech.
Well, yeah, and again, insult to injury on the build, they put the offset irons on. He's got a fixed front sight because it's a Mark 18
Yeah.
Mod O, and it doesn't have they didn't put a folding or fixed rear sight. And then they put, instead of a real EOTech, it's an airsoft knockoff they slapped on there.
I didn't even notice that part, but that's...
Yeah, I have a buddy who posted a photo, and he was looking around, and he ID'd it, and you can find it Chinesium. It's because they have all these really badass photos that are super tight and have the light shining on the gun, and the damn optic, it has the shroud around it had teardrop shapes instead of the EOTech's round holes. That only matches with like Chinesium variants of the EOTech. And then of course he had a 1.5 foot long suppressor on a 10.5 or 10.3 gun.
Yeah. We had a Matt Saranowski on. I don't know what happened to that episode. I'm pretty sure it just like back in the early days of us using Zencastr, a lot of files used to get corrupted. And we lost like I want to say 5 or 6 episodes just to the fucking ether. But it was super interesting because he was an armorer on film, and and he talked about a lot of how this stuff goes together. And I went to visit him, and they just have like bins and bins and bins of like EOTech, Aimpoint, like all this Trigicon stuff, all these like various like expensive red dots, and you look through them and none of them work. But they're not airsoft knockoffs either. They're actually returns. Like they're
that's clever.
They're unserviceable, like broken warranty returns, and no actual like professional relationship, no contract signed, nothing like that. Like big companies will just give film studios this stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, why wouldn't they? It's like it is free advertising, and what better to do that than pay to have it all thrown into a dumpster? That's awesome.
Yeah. It's like you can't really do anything with it anyways. It's basically just scrap value. So just give them to film studios and you get immediate free advertising. The same reason we see fucking 511 in every single action movie. Like you see a scene where people are wearing tactical gear. It's all 511 plate carriers. Same reason. Apparently they're the only big company that holds stock of plate carriers enough to actually outfit an entire movie set immediately. It's probably that reason too. They had rows and rows and rows of them, but like you can't go to like, I don't know, T-Rex Arms or something like that being, hey, give us 100 plate carriers on Thursday, and they all need to be this specific color.
That's kind of the fun thing watching with like the Bond movies, like if not on the firearm side obviously, but like on the clothing and everything, because the Bond brand is a giant brand at this point too, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes if they bring something on like suits, they have to have an obscene amount of them, and they're bespoke made often, or they're made to measure at least, and then there's variants on variants because of different levels of distressing. And you kind of hear these interviews, some of these shops that are like small, and they're being brought on because Daniel Craig really liked their sunglasses, or because he really liked the shirt, or whatever the case may be. And they're like, yeah, we kind of just stopped doing everything and worked through the night to make sure we can actually get on the film. It's funny you bring up 511 though, because one thing, I guess I didn't explain it, so I probably should. The book is covering the guns of James Bond in both all of the books, which include Ian Fleming and continuation authors, so 70 years of literary writing, and then 60 years of cinema, so the 25 official films, and then the offshoot unofficial ones are being talked about too.
Yeah.
So when one of the books, Carte Blanche, is written by Jeffrey Deaver, and it was written in like the mid 2000s, like we're talking peak 511 era, right? And you are one chapter into this book, and James Bond is in Afghanistan. He is wearing 511 tactical and OD green head to toe. He has a black leather pancake holster on his, at the 3 o'clock position, with a 40 caliber Walther PPS M1 in the holster, and he's got Oakley sunglasses.
Oh my God. So he looks like he just walked out of like, a 511 catalog. Like
like it's I remember reading that for the first time, and I was like 15, and I was like, what in the hell?
Yeah, it's like
it really just throws you out of it.
Which
Yeah, and he's
it's
like,
like it's a
I'm in
different world.
concealment. I'm like, dude, you're in the Middle East and you're wearing I am an operator.
Yeah. Just like you're a
It,
white dude clad head to toe in 5'11", carrying a Walther. Like you're not from here.
yeah, in an American round at
Yeah.
that. In the American round. So I get it. Like I'm not deriding it. And one of the things that would be very, very exhausting to do would be to beat up a ton of time in writing, like explaining all the issues with everything Fleming did or all the movies did. Like I'm here to celebrate the stuff, but every once in a while you can take a step back and go, so this only makes sense if you see where it was written or when or why, and it doesn't really make sense at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. It's not really like they're not Jack Carr. They're not,
No, no, Jack does a phenomenal job. I love I've said it once and I'll say it 1,000 times. He is the modern equivalent of like an Ian Fleming as a writer.
yeah.
Because in every other detail, if you've ever read a Fleming novel, he is the king of esoteric detail. He had such a passion for you pick up a book and you're reading it and he has every brand of whatever the soap is being used, the fabric of the suits, the way they're cut. You're like in this time capsule of reality when you step into one of those books. And honestly, that's what I'm most excited about Jack's books in like a decade is kind of like seeing like what was in vogue, not only politically because he does such a great job there. I mean, he's incredibly well read, but then in the tools, right? Like, oh, okay, this was like the cutting edge gear and like knives and firearms and carry methods. And I love that he hasn't like picked a gun and stuck with it. Like the first book, he's got like a Glock 43 at the appendix for a while for deep concealment, and then he's on to SIGs after that. Like he kind of he bounces around, and it's really fun. He's the modern
He's a
equivalent
Sigger.
for James Bond. He is. He's a big. I mean, Jack's a big SIG guy anyway because I mean he carried the 226 in the SEALs.
Yeah, okay, that does track. I remember that was a big plot point in the show, Terminal List,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which
yeah.
fantastic show. I haven't really watched a lot of TV in this last little while, but Terminal List was one of them, and it was very well done.
Yeah. I think that's one of those cool shows where all the stars align. They let they let Jack Carr be very involved in the story. So he was able to adapt his own work to the screen, which is a really big deal. He had the exact showrunner that he had envisioned. And I don't know if you knew this, but he actually, when writing the book, the original book, um, because he says this a lot, growing up in the 80s and watching all these books turned into movies like First Blood and everything else, he liked to envision who was going to be playing the character. And he saw Parks and Rec era Chris Pratt as James Reese, and then
Really?
he gets Chris Pratt to play him. Yeah, because he did a small part in Zero Dark 30, so he plays this like
Yes, he did.
yeah, yeah, and so that was like right when that had happened, and so he does a number of interviews where he's talked about this, and he could always say it better than I could, but Jack mentioned he's like I'm gonna make this guy do some really really bad stuff, like it's gonna get really dark, it's gonna get really gritty, and I need someone who is warm and authentic and who can be redeemed as a hero here and not just walk away as like the revenge fueled villain, right? Because he wanted to make it into a series
Yeah.
and he clearly has
I
very
mean,
very
you've
well.
got a dude like disemboweling people and
Hmm.
stringing their guts onto ceilings.
Yeah,
That
and if you think
my
that's violent, you should read the book because the scene in the book is much darker.
yeah. My mind jumps to that like meme of Chris Pratt making the surprised smile face in Parks and Rec,
Yeah,
like as Andy Dwyer. I love that show.
yeah, no, it's so much fun. My wife is obsessed with it. I can't do the cringe humor super well. She's so like if she puts on The Office, I've got headphones and a podcast in.
Yeah.
I just can't do it. But if she's watching Parks and Rec, I can enjoy it. And yeah, he's definitely the show stealer there. And yeah, him as the lead is just a blast. So there's
Yeah.
my plug for the Terminal List series. Please read those if you like James Bond
Yeah.
or
I
just
need
like
to
guns and
read.
current fiction.
Yeah, I need to read more books, but I think that requires me to learn how to read first. Um,
Well, one step at a time, brother.
one step at a time. I'm
The
working on like
James Bond
bigger books
books are
right
little novellas. They're only like 250 pages to 300 pages. They could fit in your back pocket. You could read it out loud, one word at a time. Do a chapter at a
now.
time.
Oh man, I wonder what's going to happen to James Bond now that spoiler alert, you probably don't care if you haven't seen it by now, so spoiler alert, maybe just like go ahead the next 15 seconds if for whatever reason you're the one person who gives a fuck. James Bond's super dies at the end. There's no even question about it. He gets hit by a fucking missile.
Oh, he gets
I
hit by
wonder
like
how
50.
what? Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, no,
the,
he is
the
like
full
about
reboot.
as dead gets. Like I
Yeah,
figured they'd cut away and make it a little ambiguous. It's like, no, that guy is paste. He's like
super dead.
emulsified sludge. Um,
Hmm. Yeah,
like
they came up with like the most convoluted he can't live because he might kill the people he loves plot line,
yeah,
and then they're like, well, there's only one thing we can do, and they just murk him. But no,
yeah, they killed him about as much as you can kill someone in a movie.
yeah, yeah, I remember watching that I saw it in Chicago at a press screening. I got invited out to go do one of those, so I did a up and down trip. I'm based in Kansas City to the Chicago area, so I flew there in the morning and then I
God,
flew
I'm so
back at night
sorry.
just to see this movie. And I'm very surprised I made both flights, to be honest. But
Yeah,
it was timed with the actual like world premiere in London, so I was, thank God, watching it at the same time as everybody else. And yeah, I remember I was one of the few people who just stayed in my seat through the credits, because the most important words in cinema, if you're a James Bond fan, appear at the very end of the credits where it says James Bond will return.
yes,
And we get those words again. So, the Craig era is obviously a hard reboot. Casino Royale, they didn't have the rights to it for a long, long time because Ian Fleming had sold them.
yeah.
Um, and so they rebooted in the era of Batman Begins and reboots being the hot new ticket. And we get a cover to cover story of this version of James Bond, which is pretty fun. I think it's a good
I
time.
do like the fact that like they brought everything around. There was one thing that, and I know this is going to be me, and this isn't going to be true to Fleming, and you as an actual Bond aficionado can probably say more about it than I can. But I really liked the theory that James Bond was not a name; it was more a moniker. It was more a name given to a series of agents. So it tied all the universes together. Daniel
Yeah, you're
Craig was
right. I hate
the
that.
last person to. Sorry.
I said, no, you're right. I do hate that one.
Yeah, because I liked it, and when they finally got around to him seeing his family's home, but I don't know. I just like the idea of Roger Moore and Daniel Craig and Pierce Brosnan all existing within the same world.
Hmm. Yeah, it's weird because like they did the reboot thing before a reboot was a thing. Like they obviously had
Yeah,
to soft reboot the franchise every time they brought in a new actor,
yeah,
because but then they do callbacks to all the old movies like constantly.
yeah.
Um, and so there'd be like an implication like in the 80s that it's the same dude who was the same age in the 60s. And I've never liked that part of it. It's almost like reading like Batman comics.
Yeah,
Like Batman is perpetually 35 years old, but now he has a
yeah,
kid who is in his like mid-teens and 15 sidekicks. I'm like, did this all happen in the span of 3.5 years?
yeah,
Um, like, what's that kind of stuff when the lore gets over cumbersome is really hard. So I do enjoy the opportunity to kind of reboot it. Or a lot of my favorite continuation novels are period sets, so they actually take it back to the Fleming world.
yeah,
Um, or they kind of do a soft reset like in like Carte Blanche and put him in modern day and make him a whole new modern character. So
yeah.
it's a weird thing. No, I've definitely seen that conspiracy theory a few times, and it irks me, but it's okay. I get it. Everyone's allowed to have any opinion, whether it's one I agree
Yeah,
with or
I
not.
mean, like continuity wise, none of it really works.
No, not
Um,
at all.
yeah, and
Not
I
at all.
remember. Yeah, because you have such a fantastical world to begin with. I remember it did annoy me a little bit with Spectre when they tried to tie all the movies
Hmm.
together, but it was pretty clear that it wasn't written to be like that. So
No,
yeah, you
the
had Christoph Waltz, who is just a fucking
yep.
powerhouse of a human being, and even he didn't manage to sell it to me, and I have quite a suspension of disbelief. So
Yeah, they I love Eon. It's the same family and the same production agency it's produced all these movies,
yeah,
from beginning to end. And one thing that I do consider to be a clear complaint of them is they, after after they did such a marvelous job with the Connery era, where they kind of like created a trend, they then chased trends almost exclusively.
Yeah.
And they don't know what to do with stuff when they get their hands on it. Like if you look to like
Yeah.
the Roger Moore movies, Live and Let Die, that was like right in the middle of like the big blaxploitation film era, and so they leaned really heavily into that, and they made that movie. And then the next one, The Man with the Golden Gun, was like at the peak of Bruce Lee and kung fu style movies, and so they took a book that was set exclusively in like Jamaica and Cuba and put it in Southeast Asia and made it a kung fu movie. And then they send James Bond to space on the heels of Star Wars. Like that was their whole process. And so
Yes.
when in 2013 they finally got the rights back to the organization Spectre, instead of sitting on it and waiting 2 more movies for Daniel Craig to retire and to tie up his storyline nicely with Quantum and everything else, they just threw in the hand grenade of Spectre, and then they doubled down and like, oh, and then we're gonna make him his brother because that makes sense. Everyone calls it Brofeld, which was just awful.
Yeah.
It hurts. It physically hurts.
Yeah. I read a pretty good kind of a breakdown on the chasing of trends and how you can basically tie every James Bond from every era to both like the geopolitics and the cinema trends of the time. Like Pierce Brosnan
Mm-hmm.
came in at the on the heels of the 90s action movie
Yeah.
craze, which is why you see him like massacring like
Oh
waves
yeah.
upon waves of Eastern European soldiers with a machine gun as he
Mm-hmm.
drives the tank solo. Like Brosnan,
Yeah, I mean, the first 2 movies end with him in tactical gear, like
yeah,
full on 1990s, like, again, on the heels of like the big action movies of like the late 80s, early 90s, and on the heels of obviously like Princess Gate and the public announcement of like the SAS and like what they were able to do. He's at the end of Tomorrow Never Dies, head to toe in black tactical gear. Like
yeah,
it's just, it was the time. It absolutely is. And it's cool because you really get to you get to see what the world really was at the time, and they try to bring as much cutting edge of the time stuff into the movies, but they
yeah,
are of their time.
100%. And kind of in that vein, I saw a fairly good, and it's a theory. Everything's a theory.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the bringing all the worlds together and all the movies and creating a cohesive universe around Daniel Craig was the production house's answer to the Marvel Cinematic Universe and how everything was trying to build cohesive universes of movies that everyone goes to see. That was the trend of the mid 2000s, like the 2010s to
Yeah.
2015s. So that was their attempt to make a James Bond cinematic universe, and it kind of fell in its face.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking for the cinematic universe feel, I really think you're more close to like No Time to Die, where they bring in he's retired, and so there's a new 007, and then you have Anna de Armas as this American agent in Cuba and stuff, where they're giving you these other agents and plot lines, and they actually were really into that idea. This was not the first time they had approached that concept. Actually, in 2002, when Die Another Day came out, it was set up for Halle Berry to kind of be her own character, like the Jinx character. They were planning to do some sort of like spin-off movie with her
Yeah,
as an agent with all that, and it fell flat because they at post 9/11 they had to do a hard reboot.
yeah,
Um, and that was, and again, trend chasing. Like I think I mentioned this just a little bit ago. Like Casino Royale is so very much of its time. It's an amazing movie,
yeah.
but it was in the same
I think it
era
might be
as
my
Batman
favorite.
Begins and The Bourne Identity.
Yeah,
They were like, we need a gritty reboot.
yeah. Have you seen The Raid? I think we talked about this the other day. It's like one of my
No, I
favorite.
wrote it down when we talked about it. I have not watched anything since we spoke last.
I highly, highly recommend it. I'm going to bully you until you watch it later, and anyone listening to this. Just a fantastic movie of just. I mean, it's not quite as refined as a Bond movie. It is a formulaic. You ever see Dread, like the 2014 Dread?
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite movies, and it's very similar. I think it actually came out in the same year, which is you have cops. They go into a building. They are cut off from the outside world. No one knows they're there. They have to fight their way to the top and kill the bad guy. That's it. But it is
Soul.
one. Yeah. Yes.
I-
It just works. It just
yeah.
works. It is. a truly unique cinematic experience. God, this is the Art and War podcast, and we're getting into the fucking art.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, no, there's a very good fight scene that takes place in a hallway where he just has like a knife and a baton, and the camera barely cuts it all, and he just plows his way through crowds and crowds of stuntmen that clearly are not unionized because they are just getting absolutely demolished. Yeah, good movie.
Well,
Highly recommend.
that's like right in the Daredevil era too, where like the hallway fight was like the thing, the one
Yes,
shot. Yeah.
I loved that. Back when Marvel wasn't just dog shit consumed slop, I actually really liked the Daredevil Punisher
Oh
kind of
yeah.
arc. Yeah, I haven't
Yeah, I
really
feel like that back before Marvel kind of fell apart, back before Netflix fell apart, like when they were just like
yeah,
producing super high-end content to like
yeah,
bring
where
you
where
in.
they would give a young aspiring director with a vision a bunch of money and say, "Hey, make it about this character if you want. Just make a good movie. We don't give a fuck." And
Hmm.
they would actually create good movies.
Yeah.
Like the reboot of the Punisher. I grew up reading Punisher. Like not
Yeah.
the weird gay whatever the fuck it turned into now, but you ever read Punisher Max, like Garth Ennis?
No, but I
It,
know Garth Ennis.
yeah. I'd be surprised if you didn't. Like Garth Ennis,
Hmm.
Warren Ellis, like that entire like league of writers. But yeah, he did a 60 issue run of Punisher back when comic books were cool or whatever, where
Uh-huh.
it followed the continuity of when the Punisher came out back in Vietnam era. Essentially, he was a Spider-Man villain. It followed that, like he was a Vietnam veteran. He came back, he had awful PTSD, and he wasn't really doing the right thing for the right reasons. He was simply trying to cope with the loss of his family and his PTSD in a horrible way. And this 60 issue series just continued that. He's like, okay, well, he's a Vietnam veteran, so clearly he's like in his mid 60s.
Right.
He's really broken and not a good person, and like none of the usual comic bookisms were in there. It was just
Hmm.
this really sad story from beginning to end, and then he dies, and that's it. Like there was no reboot, there's no nothing. He just fucking like there was one way, and you know it from the beginning that this story could have gone, which is he lived the way he died, and he died the way he lived, and it was fantastic. And then they tried to turn it into a movie, and it was dog shit. But I think the
Yep.
Netflix adaptation was about as close to a faithful representation or an adaptation of that arc that we could have got.
No, I totally get that. I haven't read that run, but I grew up with like Frank Miller's Batman, right? Like
Yes, yes, it's kind of
it's
similar.
very much in that.
Yeah, like where you have someone who's like an artist in their own right, and they are given
Hmm.
creative
They're
access
given
to
an
any
IP and they're like, please, for the love of God, do something with this.
just do something, do anything. And I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. That's generally how you get the best fiction. But these days,
Oh,
everything is so
absolutely.
big and corporate.
Yeah. No,
Like
I think that's the worry slash hope that I have with Amazon. I don't know if you knew this, but they have a controlling share now in the James Bond movie franchise.
ugh,
They but it's
ugh,
the Eon still has like creative control. I think it's like a 49-51 kind of situation,
yeah,
but they we now have Amazon money behind Eon movies, and so I'm hoping they do right by us. I really do. I mean,
so
the
because
worst thing they could do is the opposite.
yeah, because I truly think with the right creative team, you could make an excellent James Bond movie for
Oh
like
yeah.
$20 million. You could do it on a shoestring budget
Well, the
with the
original ones
right
were done
writing.
on no money at all.
Yeah.
The best
Um.
movies. I mean, the first four Connery films. I mean, the budgets kept increasing, but I mean, Doctor No was a shoestring film. They did not
Yeah.
expect a franchise to come out of it. They licensed all the books, but they created a masterpiece with
Yeah.
just guts and guile, right? And
Yeah.
so I think I'm really hoping this is my basic Bond bitch opinion is that with the current trend of period set dramas, worst best case if Amazon greenlight something that isn't a movie, I would be more than happy to see like a Peaky Blinders or Crown or whatever type period set drama in the 60s, 50s of the original Fleming books. Like series, season by season, knocking out the original plot lines, period setting the character, make him smoke, make him drive the 1930s Bentley, make him a bastard, and just like live in the world that Bond was originally written in, just because we've never seen that on the screen.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately enough, I do think that the corporate hegemony is going to win this one, and it's going to take
Oh,
place
yeah.
in 24 in New York, and
Well, it's
Jaquifa
hard not to
Bond.
because of all the product placement stuff that's like
Yeah.
attached to it now. I mean, we
Oh,
don't get a new movie or anything talked about, but I get a marketing email from 007 store about 15 new licensed products that are over $500 on a monthly basis.
I noticed that. It's a friend of mine, Stefan. I'm going to call you out. He will occasionally send me like he wanted a war belt, and like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, shout out to AWS, Advanced Warfighting
Yeah, there
Solutions,
you
for
go.
making a good war belt. Or awful product read, but he sent me one. And it's like, oh, well, this is James Bond. It's got a quick detach thing. It's got a button, you click it and it just comes off. Like, you look at it, it's a really terrible design. And I think a lot of consumers will see something in a movie and just not really think over it and go like, oh, well, James Bond uses that, it must be good.
Yeah, and that's I guess that's part of the fun for me is because before the book and what I do day to day is I really like abusing the hell out of and using like screen accurate Bond pieces and kind of making them functional for daily carry. Like
Yes.
I carried the suede holster that you see in Spectre and Skyfall for 2 years before I put one together of my own. That was not just a suede pouch, but yeah, I carried that thing with its giant plastic clip and the soft suede pouch for 2 years with screen accurate folding pocket knife and a fixed blade, and my wallet is from the same leather maker that makes the gloves that he's worn in the last 5 movies. I mean, if you stood me up next time we see each other in person when we're at shot, I'll do my parlor trick, and you can ask me what the Bond reference is for every piece on my body / in my pockets, and I could give you an explanation for every single one of them.
Deal. Speaking of which,
It's
I'm excited for
magic.
SHOT Show.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone again.
Yes.
It's that like dangerous fun thing where it's exhausting, it's chaotic. But I used to work at a store. I grew up behind the gun counter like so many people in this industry. Gun counter, range. We had the simulator. We did a lot of stuff, and I had so much fun there. And I don't ever want to work in that kind of world, in that direct kind of world again, because it is just so burnout. But to do it for a week with some of my favorite people, this is my shout out to Cabot and Alchemy. They brought me on last year to help fill in some gaps for them, and they brought me back again this following year. And I love just standing there at the counter, telling everyone why I love product, talking about the guns, breaking it down in front of people, doing the photography, just being there and doing all that. A week at a time, it's awesome.
Yeah. It's you meet a lot of people at SHOT Show.
Oh yeah. No, it's nonstop. You run into everyone that you never. It's the smallest world in the world, the firearms community. Like there's little to no doubt about that. It's like everyone has like 2 degrees of separation away from someone you're trying to get a hold of or meet up with.
Yeah, you were basically like one of my primary SHOT Show buddies last year. Like we you basically babysat me while I wandered around, usually full of the free beers that random places were giving out.
You were really good at that.
Thank you. God, I love the people watching there so much, though. It's like, okay, Arc'teryx jacket and tan boots. Arc'teryx jacket and tan boots. Okay, Arc'teryx jacket and green boots this time. And then there's a crowd full of Koreans in suits, and they probably work at PMC. Like seeing all the SHOT Show archetypes. I kind of want to do like a bingo card list this year and just like have people printed out.
Put a Russian mobster on there, because I swear one of my SHOT Show stories from last year, at the end of the week at the Alchemy booth, this guy walks up to me in head to toe, like mobster black 3-piece suit with black suede Louis Vuitton slippers, and he walks up to me in the heaviest Russian accent, asks me how much all the guns in our booth are worth because he would like to
Huh.
buy all of them in cash before we leave.
Huh.
He's like, I come back and I pay cash. I'm like, that's not how this works. Like, these are, I can't just sell you these guns. He's like, no. I come back later. I have duffel. I'm like, you have duffel bag? He's like, I have duffel. He's like, I bring
wonder
cash.
how many places he went to and how many places said yes.
Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh. I told the owner of Alchemy and Cabot that I'm like, hey guys, just want to let you know, if you get a cold call from a guy who sounds like he's off the Soviet bloc, like, just, he is real and he was here. I did see him.
That is really, really, really funny.
And I'm just glad I got a hold of him instead of Eli. Eli wasn't at the booth, and he's got a heavy Southern accent, so the two of them like translating between each other probably would have been amazing people watching.
Yeah, but the people watching is so good. We stayed at a Circus last year because like we booked last minute, and it was like, oh, this is a cheap deal for a hotel, not knowing Circus's reputation or what kind of a place it is. And now that I've been there, I see memes about it all the time. It's like, oh, yeah. It
was kind of clean in the 60s when they filmed a Bond movie in Vegas, but everything looks the exact same.
Did they film a Bond movie in Circus? Because that like from what I saw there, I cannot imagine that. It is comparatively a slum.
Yeah, they at least did the exteriors there. I'm pretty sure the casino floors that they used were not in Vegas for a couple of them, but I'm pretty sure they did a lot of stuff inside Circus too, actually. But it probably hasn't changed too much aside from the wall decorations since.
Yeah, I can see how it would actually look nice if they removed all the people. And the big thing is the people, and just like deep cleaned everything. When it was made, it probably looked like any other. I just don't like casinos in general. I don't even really like drinking, and I don't gamble as a rule.
Yeah, I don't do the Vegas thing. I know that sounds counterintuitive, I guess, as like the big obsessive Bond guy, but I like playing cards.
Yeah.
But I don't feel the need to gamble in front of electronic slot machines or with someone at like a blackjack table with a dead look in their eyes or whatever. Like that isn't stimulating to me. Like I feel like with the electronic slots and with everything we've got, it killed whatever magic people were trying to create about Vegas to begin with, and it kind of just turned it into what it is today. And it's hard and it's sad. I mean, the first year I was at SHOT, when I was with my previous company, I was staying like 3 or 4 blocks away. It was about a 20-minute walk to the Venetian for the show. And I remember I'd get up at like 5:30, 6 a.m. I'd put on a suit and I'd walk the 5 blocks, and they'd be, you get out of the elevator on the main floor, and there's people that are there with a full ashtray and a slot machine covered in empty drinks, and you don't know if they're starting their morning or they're finishing their night. All you know is you want to get out of that building as quickly as possible because you're choking on the cigarette smoke already. But you get outside and it's not much better because they're literally hosing urine and fecal matter off the streets. You're stepping over all that, in addition to people who are sleeping out there. I mean, it's really juxtaposed because like I don't think anywhere else in the world could handle what shows like this are. But on the other hand, like going there is just such a slog.
Yeah. I would be inclined to believe that. I hate looking into the marketing psychology and everything that goes into keeping these people gambling all night, keeping these people sitting at like the lack of windows, the constantly pumping full of alcohol. All of these little
the bright lights, the stimulating lights and noises. I mean, I'm a marketing major by trade, which obviously is basically just a psychology, sociology degree, and which again, I guess means nothing, but it's what I do professionally. And I mean, it's like it is by definition the most problematic things that you could do in that industry cranked to 11.
Yeah, 100%. But I do remember the one good thing about Circus is it does have a Popeyes in the lobby, which is probably how I ended up getting gout. Yeah. it's a problem. I basically haven't eaten fast food since I got to America, but I will make an exception for that dirty fucking bird.
We'll have like I'll make sure to buy like a bag of clementines or something so you don't get scurvy in Vegas.
I don't get scurvy.
Yeah, well, you had gout this last time, so we just don't know what's gonna happen.
Oh, this time my heart's just gonna pop. It's gonna explode like an overripe tomato. But I am really looking forward to just like people watching all of this depression, and
Well, that's not dark at all.
it's a little bit.
You're like, I can't wait to see the decline and decay of humanity right in front of me.
Just like everything that's wrong with Western civilization shoved into a few casinos. I am definitely going to wear shoes with comfy soles.
Yeah, you probably should this time.
So should you. You wore
maybe
fucking leather dress shoes the entire time. I wore Altama Assaults, and I felt like I was going to fucking die. I even put Dr. Scholl's in them, like orthopedic soles.
Yeah.
But I walked some really fucking far.
Yeah, I mean, I was averaging like 10 to 15 miles a day on foot between like walking the floor and then you walk. I mean, you walk everywhere the entire time, obviously, but I also live out of like my dress shoes / boots, like my daily wears. I'm not like wearing like patent leather shoes every day, or like suede 2-eyelet chukkas. That's like the shoe from like the Daniel Craig era, and all of his like neat casual wardrobe, and those were kind of the derby style was like really big in the Connery era, and they kind of just fit everything I want to wear or do. And so those are like a pair of dress boots, but you get used to it, I guess. I just don't mind.
I'm impressed.
It's kind of like carrying like a PPK. Like people make fun of me for it, but it's what makes me happy, and it works really well for me. So I really can't complain.
Yeah, if it works and if you can put shots down range with it, fuck it.
Yeah. I was just at Walther, and I'm sure they were just patting me on the head, but we were shooting all together, and at the end of it, they're like, "Oh, you should shoot your PPK," and so I cleared the mag out of the hollow points, and I grabbed 5 spare magazines and just shoved them in my pocket, drew and put together a pretty good, like, palm and a half size group with all those mags in a pretty efficient time span. And my friends there are like, like, we don't shoot the PPK as much as you do. Clearly, you're shooting it a little better than what we would consider ourselves to be able to do at. But he was also kicking my ass with his PDP. So, it's quid pro quo there. It's what you train with. And I work from home and I dry fire my PPK literally every hour of the day.
Yeah, and that does help. Man, I haven't been dry firing as much as I usually do lately, and it's definitely made a difference in the bad way.
Yeah, it's crazy like how easy it is to kind of forget those skills, and like they get sloppy and soft. That is one of my favorite things. I have a blog that I wrote for Bond fans, because one of the things I really like to do is inundate people into our world via this lens of pop culture. That's like not a shocking thing for people in, I guess, like my generation, right? Because that's like the T-Rex arms approach with like modern warfare and like the video games, right? But like I think James Bond is like such a global brand that isn't, people know is like violent, but it's like tongue in cheek, right?
Yeah,
like guns are the core part of the character, but it's so much more, and people try to like live the lifestyle in every other way. So I try to introduce people to our world via James Bond. And one of the things that was really cool is if you read all the Fleming novels, he was obsessed with dry fire. Like,
really? That's interesting.
The books have James Bond clearing his gun. Yeah, like 1953, the very first book has him stripping the mag out of this little tiny 25 auto Beretta, racking the round out of the chamber, emptying the magazine, dropping the hammer on, or striker, dropping the striker on the empty chamber, racking it a few times, reloading it, putting it in the holster, and then doing a check in the mirror to make sure he wasn't printing before straightening his tie and leaving.
That is actually before its time.
And so like even for, and that's why when I say like I'm here to celebrate stuff, like he got a lot of details wrong on like firearm stuff, but that's like a reoccurring thing. Yeah, I mean he was a British guy. He was in the service, but he was on a desk jockey side of it most of the time, and so like it's not like he was living, breathing, and dying the world of firearms, but he was so passionate about like those types of details. You read something like that, and if you're a firearms person or not, you get like immediately engaged with it. So yeah, I wrote an article kind of consolidating all these different things that happen in the Fleming novels, like How to Train Like James Bond. And like, this is like to the max, like what he did. And this is what a Bond on the road would be doing in a hotel room with his PPK before he leaves, is dry fire, practice, reloading it into the holster and disappearing into the night. Like, that's just, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. That is actually interesting. And dry fire hasn't really become a, I remember even 5 years ago, more like
Oh
10,
yeah.
it was contentious, you know. People would say like,
Mm-hmm.
why are you doing that? Why?
Well,
You're
yeah, and
wasting.
that was like 10 years ago. It was the big, well, first of all, you don't need to do it. And second of all, you better damn well be using a snap cap so you don't destroy the springs on your guns. And I
Yeah.
mean, the amount of lore and the amount of insistence and expertise that people have on every facet of this world, when like we're not all gunsmiths, and it's okay to acknowledge where your understanding of an issue lapses, or where, that knowledge gap exists.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's interesting to watch. That's been the hardest part for the writing of the book too, honestly, is like there's not a lot of good scholarly research that is really in our industry at all. And so when you want to write about firearms and their usage over time and this and that,
Yeah.
there's only so many sources that there are that aren't just like word of mouth. And
Yeah.
it's like,
And
well,
even
I
then, a
get,
lot of word of mouth
yeah,
is based on like anecdotal experiences. Like, yes, this is the
yeah,
best thing that exists. I used it to like basically guard a base in Kandahar, Afghanistan for 6 months. Therefore, it is the
mm-hmm,
best thing because it's what the government issued me. Yeah, like this white light, which is anemic by modern standards, is the best thing because it worked really well in my 2 deployments on just like shooting fucking people, like shepherds living in
mm-hmm.
caves. Like things change, and you're right. There isn't really an objective measure of basically anything. Like
No, and the hardest part for me was, especially, I went to sit down to write about the ASP 9mm, the ASP, right?
yeah,
And because it's used in the bulk of the continuation novels by an author named John Gardner. And I was like, okay, I'll knock this out in like a month. It took me almost 2.5 months, just because I was exhausting myself. Like, I had to keep coming back to it while writing other parts of this book,
yeah,
using the word purportedly or whatever, because I had all these articles. I had gone to some people who used to be writers in the firearms industry in the world in the 80s, and they were sending me PDF scans of all these articles that are primary sources at the time, but all they're doing is quoting each other. One guy makes some anecdotal claim, and then the next 10 articles say the same thing.
yeah.
Like, there was no
I would
proof
go
to
as
any
far
of
to
it.
say that's even true now. It's
Oh, absolutely.
yeah. In an episode a little while ago, I complained about this dog shit. I hate it. I hate it. Whoever designed these things, fuck you. 22 LR double barrel revolver that shot
Yeah.
shots with. I fucking hate that thing. That thing is like meme worthy dog shit. And every article I could find on it, because I hated this thing so much, I went down like an autistically deep hole researching it for reasons to hate it even more. After using it, and
Hmm.
everyone's reviews were like, "Oh yes, this is great. This thing is fantastic. By the way, it shoots like 3 feet higher than where the irons are aiming at 5 yards, but who
Aim
cares?
super low.
Yeah, just aim really low. It's not like you're using this at a punching distance anyway." It's like, what the fuck? Like, if your only metric for if this gun is good or not is if it goes bang every time, you're a fucking retard. But like when I look into anecdotal gun reporting, it's remember that like I was never part of this, but like that whole kerfuffle on the internet about like reporting in video games a few years ago,
Yeah.
and just like how all of it is fake. I remember when someone came to me about it years ago, my response was basically, well, it's writing on the internet, it's reporting in general, reporting is fake. Like basically all product reporting, all anything, like there's very stringent
Hmm.
like level of, I guess, like ethical morality that it takes to just not be a piece of shit when you're talking about products or even know what the hell you're talking about. Most people fall very, very short of that. You
Well,
can't
yeah,
trust
because I mean, a lot of people are like, well, if it works to a level of like even 30 to 40%, like of adequacy, they're happy to write a glowing review about it if they get it for free. I mean, that's an issue that transcends any industry. But I mean, it's bad. Like, the product side of it's awful. But I did. This is really where my nerd shows. I did debate for 10 years, And in college, what I would do just to prove a point of how absurd everything is, and just to make it to where I had more sanity, because not to get too deep into it, but in college debate, the only way you can win is if you out left your opponent. So if they say abolish the police, you say actually abolishing the police doesn't work. You have to like burn the entire world to the ground. Like that's the that's the extremes that they go to in that kind of realm. And so what I was doing was I would write like scenarios. If my thing didn't happen, here's what's going to happen. And I would just take the plot of a Bond movie and take scholarly writing and current articles that were written up to the minute, put 5 or 6 of them together to create the evidence story, and literally recreate the plot line of a Bond movie. And I would just name it after the Bond movie. Like I literally went around because 10 minutes beforehand, I had cut together a Tomorrow Never Dies advantage about satellites getting hacked to spoof GPS signal in the South China Sea, causing a regional war that leads to nuclear disaster. With 5 articles.
Yeah.
You can make any story happen with any link thing that you do. So like I'm very apathetic to, did you see XYZ or did you read? I'm like, well, if I don't see it, hear it, or feel it myself, like I have a hard time like believing what's being told to me unless I like truly trust the source.
Yes. Me too. And I know a lot of people, and like, God, some of them are really good friends, but they're constantly stressing over like, oh, like there's going to be, bombs on American soil, and like, oh, on this day the Hamas is going to storm over the southern border, and so and so, and there's so much noise and fear mongering and everything else. And like, well, I do think there's very real things that everyone has to worry about, and rising crime, eggs costing X amount, poverty leads to crime, maybe things about the border, who fucking knows, I don't care. Like there's
Yeah,
simply
that's not
so
to
much.
me saying at all that like being nuanced or being well read is a sin. It just
Yeah.
it does mean that it actually the being the nuanced part is the most important part about it. Like
Yeah.
the you should be well read on geopolitics because they do
Yes.
matter, and you should understand to what degree they impact your day-to-day life. Like you can't live in fear of what's going on in the world, but you should at least know what's happening, because it's you live in a free society, and that means it's your obligation as an individual to be well informed.
Yes.
And right now you have to dig even harder to be well informed, but
Yeah, because there's so much
all the more
noise.
reason to do it.
Yeah. And like, as with all things, just follow the money. Like, who is funding what sells the most advertiser space? I think like,
Yeah, start with
well,
why.
yeah, why?
Not to
Like,
quote Simon Sinek, which is a marketing writer, but that is a really good book, and it is a really good example. Like, just philosophically start with the why behind what someone's trying to say. Like, the debate word we would always use, like, what is the warrant of the card? Like, what are they trying to tell you?
yeah.
You read an
Because
article, okay, you walk away, tell me exactly what they are trying to tell you, and tell me what they're trying to say in the article that actually proves that, or how is it structured, and then who else is saying the same thing about other things. And you can go down the whole rabbit hole. I like that side of the world, and it's disappointing that we don't see that very often. Like when you
yeah.
see a political debate or anything like that, people just kind of anecdotally say things. Like I want to see citations. I want to hear where you're getting the information. Buzzwords are exhausting. I did a debate actually last year. It was like this organization called American Public Square had invited my company out
Oh, I
to it.
remember that. You did really well.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. I was on a panel of 5 people, and I was the only pro-gun person on the panel. I was sitting up there with like the largest, I think, Methodist or Baptist preacher in the country. He had like one of the largest congregations and had like 5 or 6 mega churches, I think, in our region. A guy who was the director of a giant healthcare organization here in Kansas City. A Moms Demand Action elected state representative, and a college student. I really felt bad for her because she had no business being up there, and she was getting really freaked out and stressed. Like it was not a good. They did not prep her very well, but
Yeah.
I remember like I was the only one who showed up with my own research. Like I had a laptop in front of me. I think I had like a 400-page metadata file I had put together. I read every Supreme Court case to the T, um, the Bruin decision and everything else. And I remember I was super irked. I read directly from the Bruin decision. I read the Supreme Court text, and they had fact checkers, which are just public librarians who were pulling up articles to tell you if you were right or wrong if someone requested it. and they read someone else's legal opinion on the case telling me that I was wrong. I'm like, well, I,
What the
I just
hell?
read you the case text. I read you the primary source, and it does not. You're taking someone's extrapolation of that and making a new argument. I'm giving you the dead to rights. This is literally what it's saying.
Yeah,
So
that
all
is.
that to say, like it was fun, but
Yeah, but unfortunately, you're kind of right about the. A lot of people, I think, will take opinions and headlines as primary
oh
sources
yeah,
as opposed to the actual primary source.
yeah. Well, that was everyone. All they wanted to tell me. They actually were getting frustrated with me because they're like, what are you trying to get at here? I'm like, well, I'm trying to. You told me this is a policy oriented conversation we're having, and you want to create some sort of solvency. And like the only way to get there is like being honest about like the world that you're actually in. And so
Yeah,
you should maybe like not just speak the platitudes, but read. And one of the things they wanted me to do was actually sign a document of like the research they had done prior to the event, saying that these are the bare facts we can all agree to. And I remember I had like 3 to 4 hour long conversations on the phone with the people that were putting on this debate because I was like, I can't sign this document. Half your sources are from like the Bloomberg, organization for one of his many organizations for gun research. And every town for gun violence is being cited. I'm like, you're citing a study that's creating an impact story about numbers. Like, here's the DOJ report on it. Like it or not, this is as close to primary source you can get on this for crime statistics. So
yeah,
maybe you should cite them instead of people who are making an opinion based on numbers and cherry picking 2 or 3 numbers out of it. I literally had to explain to them they were doing the same thing in their mind as like quoting the NRA, which
yeah,
obviously it doesn't really, it's not the same thing, but speaking to them on a layman's level, it made sense.
yeah. Well, I imagine they got kind of poopy about that.
Oh, they were happy. I was not the first person that they've had to work with to adjust the document, but I was the only one who didn't sign it. I'm like, I literally, like, we edited it for hours and hours and hours, and I still walked into the debate. I'm like, I can't sign this form, guys. Like, you're you're lying. Like, you didn't take, you're not ethically
Yeah, you're not
supporting the
doing this in good
facts.
faith.
Right. And you're doing the best you can, and I respect that, but you're also not. And to me, it's frustrating because that was my whole life, like the research side of it and getting the facts right. That's why it took me so long on the ASP section, is because I don't want to promote more cannon fodder. I want to be as honest and authentic as possible, especially knowing full well I'm writing to an audience that's primarily non-traditional shooters. Like, I'm writing a book for Bond fans in the hopes to getting them excited about guns.
Yeah,
Like, though that's my target market, and I'm writing at a level deep enough to where like me and you would be excited about reading about these guns and their history and their story. But like
yes, I'm looking
at
forward
at
to
the
it.
end of the day, a true Bond nerd, someone who's just like interested in James Bond and wants to have a holistic understanding of the character, can pick it up, read a section or two with their morning coffee every day, and pick up like some cocktail conversation, start normalizing this stuff a lot more to them. And then, I want to get a holster in their waistband and get a PPK or PDP or whatever suits their fancy to get their smile on their face and a gun in their waistband and carry on. That's the goal.
Yes. I need, and this is like only half related, but I've been having this conversation with you, and what's your transfer has been giving me shit for it for a while. I need a gun that is not. Well, you know the sort of stuff that I like.
Mm-hmm.
It's all like compensated, just ugly.
You love the cyberpunk aesthetic for sure.
Yes,
It is
I do
very much
like.
your aesthetic.
I do like Glocks that look like I just pulled them off like a dead Militech guard, and then I'm going to go like raid Arasaka Tower with Johnny Silverhand. Um, I would like something like he's been pushing me to get like a Beretta, but
Mm-hmm.
I do think something that doesn't have anything on it would be nice. Maybe a Browning high power. Maybe I'll meet in the middle and get a PK.
Yeah, I feel like the PPK is such an easy place to start. I totally get what you mean. It's funny because I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum because I did grow up. I started working at a gun counter at like 17, and because we had the whole rental fleet, because we had access to all the toys all the time, I never bothered buying anything that was like modern, normal, whatever. because I
Yeah.
could always play with it. Like to me, I actually had to write the SOPs on how to clean those guns, and so to me they were my guns, and so I played with them whenever I felt like. It's all I did through high school and college was collect Bond guns, and so literally when I got my 226R, that was the first gun I had that had a rail, so I put a
Yeah.
flashlight on it, and I just got a PDP Pro SD, and
Oh, I
that's
really
the
like
first like
those.
true customized gun that I can work with now. Because everything else I
Yeah.
have is like 1930s, 1950s design and has little to no modifications able to it. And I want to keep them screen accurate. I enjoy it. No, the
Yeah.
PDP-SD is legit.
I actually really like those. Like if I was to get into another ecosystem of like firearm, it would probably be that. Like if I had to start again and wean myself off the ecosystem and parts compatibility teat that is Glock, it would probably be that or like a CZP-10 or something.
Yeah. No, I like both those platforms. I'm a sucker for Walther for so many reasons.
Yes, but they're genuinely
They're
nice. Like I tried the
yeah,
PDP before, and they are like I think slept on. I don't know anyone who carries one other than you, but
yeah.
they should be
I
more
really
common.
feel like Walther's doing such a cool job now with their. I mean, I love their marketing team. They're shooters first and foremost, which is awesome. Like you don't meet a lot of people who can kind of in this industry that walk and chew bubblegum at the same time on these
Yeah. Oh
bigger
man, you can
brands.
see that from orbit at Shot Show.
Yeah, yeah, you get the feeling like you start talking to someone that's like working a booth about the esoterics of like shooting a competition or carrying a gun for self-defense, and the more put together, quote unquote, they look like, I'm not saying like put together in the sense of like double O debonair, but like a Walmart store general manager look, the less likely they are to have an opinion on any of those subjects because they're just there cutting paycheck and
Yeah.
moving units. They can tell you the SKU numbers, but they couldn't tell you what it is. But these guys are like top tier level shooters. They work their asses off, and like the PDP was designed with a whole set of dedicated shooters and competition and instructor people all around. And I love Walther USA because what's really cool is they're a they're a big name, but they're still a small business. Like there's a small team that works on everything every single day. Um, they really, really, really care about what they're doing, and they put top tier stuff out. Like they're a little slower than some people would like sometimes, and like getting the exact product out that they want. Everyone's clamoring for like a PPS M3, and they ate them alive a couple weeks back when a new product launch dropped, and it's a reskinned PK380. It's the PD380, right? The PDP aesthetics slapped onto a PK380, but they they're just doing such a good job with the storytelling and the marketing. I don't know if you saw that launch video. I posted it on my channels as well. But they literally made like a short film that was in the vein of like a James Reese, James Bond, and like a Jason Bourne with their gun as the hero piece in this little short film. And that's how they're going to be launching products moving forward, is through this new lens and with like a character and an arc and these stories. And they're going to globetrot. And I don't see anyone else doing stuff like that.
That's kind of
It's pretty
badass.
cool.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me a little bit of last Shot Show. I remember everyone was talking about an ad a revolver company did. I can't remember. Henry, maybe? No, it was a fake ad for like a Western
Yeah.
cowboy modern thriller, and it looked
Mm-hmm.
really good. Like I would have watched that, but
yeah, I think
I
think
like
that kind of stuff's really fun.
Yeah, the high concept kind of cinematic. I like that. I think there should be more of that.
Well, I think it works well with Walther too because it nods to their cinematic roots, obviously, because the James Bond relationship's so organic. I mean, they were written into the books and it kind of just fell into their lap, but it allows them to kind of have their own spin on it.
Yeah,
and they're doing their own thing. They have their own
legally
people.
distinct Bames John.
Yes, it is legally distinct. A lot more than that. I think that they're just going with W Man as like Walther Man right now to kind of give you the rundown. But they're doing villains, and they're now gonna they're literally launching all of their guns through this lens. And so I remember I posted about it, and I was getting comments where people were flaming it. They're like, I don't see anything double O about all of this. All I see is a gun that I didn't want. Like, you're not getting it though.
Okay,
Like,
don't buy it.
right. I'm like, well, the important part is like a marketer is dealt the hand he is, and he makes the best out of it. And it's a good gun. It's in the right spot, right? I like it better than anything else in that single stack 380 market. Like I hate the Shield EZ. I could go on for hours why I hate that gun, but it fits that micro
Probably
niche
because you're
super
not
well.
a 60-year-old woman,
With like severe arthritis in the hands.
Alzheimer's.
Well, yeah, the only reason why that gun's safe for her is because she's probably not going to be able to get it to discharge. I watched so many old people and non-traditional shooters try to grip that gun, and because of the way they inverted that grip safety, from like a traditional like 1911 style grip safety, where it has to depress with the, you have to have a really, really positive grip to disengage it versus the 1911 safety where it pushes down. This one pushes from above.
Yeah.
These old ladies weren't getting to able to shoot, and I'm like, you're telling me that someone who's frail, who is your demographic here, has to have an 80 to 90% perfect grip in order to discharge this firearm in a high stress situation where they might not have a positive grip to begin with.
Yeah.
That to me is the biggest irk. But all that to say, like the marketing was the thing that I was trying to get across to people, is like, this is the aesthetics they're after. There's going to be some really cool products long term. They're going to be launched in this way. Like it's a legacy product. It's a legacy brand. And these people are working their asses off to get you in that mindset, which I just love. They're only 4 hours south of me. I spent a week with them, I guess 3 days, but it felt like so much longer a couple weeks back. And this is my biggest nerd out in the world. I got to build my own PPK series pistol on their
Yes, and it
floor.
was the 007, right?
Yeah, I was the 007th person they let do it.
That's awesome.
It was like the coolest thing in the world. And I built a PPK S in the black melon. It's my first PPK S series, which it's funny because I just told you about the Skyfall thing and how that irks me, but I love the series of guns, and it's what's cool about it from like a real world standpoint. Why I wanted one so bad was, in my research for the book, I found what I believe to be the only authenticated suppressed use of a PPK series pistol by a military force, and that was McAfee SOG during Vietnam.
Really?
They requisitioned 10 Walther PPKSs in 32 and 380 auto, threaded for silencers. And
interesting.
I found the actual requisition report. I have found photos to authenticate it. They were ordered with suppressed AK-47s actually, and there's photos of those two together. And the requisition form exists from the R&D agency that was producing these, and it matches the timeline. And I've spoken to primary sources who confirmed that they were issued these pistols, which is like the coolest thing in the world. So obviously I'm going to get this thing, drop in a Walther PP barrel and get that thing threaded, because I want to have a dedicated silenced Walther to begin with. But the whole thesis of what I'm working on with this big project is like telling real world stories, and not just like, this is a gun that existed in a Bond movie, this is what it looks like, because you can go to the Internet Movie Firearms database to get that information. What I'm doing is sharing real world stories of the guns that happen to be in James Bond's hands, in addition to the James Bond stuff. So you're getting like the blend of pop culture and reality that I'm obsessed with. I've gotten to interview some really, really cool people. You mentioned Jack Carr earlier.
Yes.
There's going to be some really cool stuff with he and I in this book that I think you guys will enjoy. He's a huge Bond nerd. He's been nothing but an amazing friend to me. Super nice guy. But I've interviewed former CIA operatives, former DSS operatives, former British commandos, Navy SEALs. I mean, it's going to be really cool to kind of like hear their primary source stories in their own words with the tools of James Bond.
Yeah, that is actually really cool. I'm looking forward to the book. I don't have a coffee table, but I'll have to buy one to put it on it.
Just get a nice stand and put it on the wall for it,
Yeah.
Whatever you're allowed to do.
Yeah.
What makes you feel better? I've intentionally designed it around, like the cover is designed for. I had my wife is proofing it. I'm asking her to like what I would be allowed to leave out in our living room versus like a super gunny looking book. Like it is a gun book, don't get me wrong, and it does, but it has like that James Bond feeling and flair to it, where it's like very classic, traditional, looks really clean. Where she'd let me leave it out in our living room versus like hiding it on the shelf.
Yeah. I I'm trying to think about like what books I have in my living room. I'm pretty sure it's just like an old copy of The King in Yellow and a small unit tactics. And that's basically it.
Yeah, I've got cases and cases of books right now. My living room shelf has all my James Bond paperbacks. I love the 1960s Signet. There's the U.S. paperbacks that they're palm size. You can fit one in your back pocket. So I've traveled all over the world with them. I keep them in my back pocket when I hike. I abuse the hell out of the things, and they're sitting on the shelf right next to all of Jack's books, his whole series, in addition to a bunch of my other favorite thrillers and
Yeah.
history. But I mean, I've bought probably 150 books just for like snippets of research for this book alone. So it's been.
Do you have a potential release date or a deadline? Self-imposed
We
or
are
otherwise?
looking for late spring. So like it depends on when layout, because that's the hardest part. The hardest part has been globetrotting. Like the team has been doing such a great job traveling around the world to capture some of these guns because they're so rare.
Yeah.
Like, do you know how hard it is to find a WA 2000?
I can imagine. I remember actually doing a little bit of research on it after. I think a company's putting one out that takes AR fire control groups. Obviously, that's not the real one.
Yeah, it's the RA
Like
2000.
somewhat
It's
like.
it's really really cool. It's a kit
Yeah.
gun. It's something that I'm gonna have to get at some point. And dude,
You
there's only
should.
176 of the things that ever were built,
Yeah.
so
I
they're
remember getting
pretty
really into it
pretty
after
rare.
Hitman.
Yes. Well, those guys were huge James Bond nerds. That's why that gun's
Really?
in that. Yeah, it's like
That that
a bunch
explains a
of the
lot,
skins
actually.
are James Bond themed. A lot of the missions have James Bond undertones to them. A lot of the guns
Yeah.
are Bond guns. They're actually developing a Bond game right now. It's kind of it's been in
Really?
progress for like the last 3 years.
I
They
did not know
announced
that.
it like just before March of 2020 and all that fun. And it was just titled Project 007. They did like a little gun barrel video, and they've done nothing or said anything about it since.
I'm cautiously optimistic if the dev cycle is that long and it comes from a good studio, maybe it'll actually be good.
Yeah, we haven't had a good James Bond video game since the
Over a
PlayStation
decade.
2 era. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up on like Nightfire. I'm too young for like the N64 generation. I'm 26.
Yeah.
I was born in 97, so
Yeah.
I missed that boat. But I grew up on like the Nightfire and From Russia with Love, which was super fun
Yeah.
because Sean Connery came back and did the voice, but he sounds like a gravelly old man.
I can't
But those
remember
were
what
so much
Bond
fun.
game I grew up playing. I was mostly like a siphon filter kid, but
Mm-hmm.
my friend had a Isaac from Schizocast. He hasn't been on in a little while, but he had a GameCube, and we
Mm-hmm.
played a ton of James Bond shooters on that. And also, yeah, the N64 one, no odd jobs.
I do have that set up in my basement now. I'm very proud. I've got a retro media setup I've been putting together now that I bought a house, and it's
That's awesome.
I stole a tube TV off the side of the road that was getting dumped, and I have a VCR. I've got an N64 and a PlayStation 2, all set up. You turn on the tube TV and there's a high pitched whine as it's running as God intended, and it's the only way to play those old games.
Yeah.
So much fun. I've tried playing them on a larger screen, but like I think because like the cleaner refresh rate and everything on these like new flat screens, if you try to put like a pixelated video game on there, it gives you a freaking migraine.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
It
I've been
does
playing
not.
the new Alan Wake lately. I don't know if you ever got into the old one. Came out like 13,
Mm.
14 years ago.
I have not installed my consoles yet. I have them sitting on shelves because I told myself I can't go down those rabbit holes again until I finish writing. Like I'm close to having primary draft one done, and then we go
Yeah.
through the editing process, and then we go into layout, and so I have enough things that are diverting attention before I like hop into a video game again.
I feel that immensely. I actually hadn't turned my PlayStation on in about 5 or 6 months.
Yeah,
It took about an hour to update everything that I had to do. When I turned it on the other day, it's just been a while. Haven't thought about it.
yeah. I'm not like a gamer really. Like, I grew up liking video games and I love playing them, with friends and stuff. And I think I kind of fell out of it like in late high school. But
Yeah.
I'll hop on occasionally when there's like a big game that like has a really cool story. Like I'm a sucker for like the Red Dead Redemptions of the world and stuff like
Oh, dude,
that.
I love
You kind
those.
of hop in and you just play like Red Dead Redemption 2 cover to cover,
Yeah.
or
Cover to
something
cover,
like
Red Dead
that.
Redemption 2 is like a solid week, though.
Yeah. I did not do my homework in college for a week. I did just play that game. I had to play it with
Yeah,
headphones because my my girlfriend, my wife now, if we were hanging out with friends, she's like, I can't hang out and do homework with you while I'm hearing you murder people in the Wild West. Like I'm gonna need you
yeah,
to I'm gonna need you to drop the volume on that. But otherwise, like or the Arkham games. I'm a huge Batman nerd.
yeah,
Um, other than that, like I just can't get into them. Maybe I'm just that lame, but I don't know. I want to like them more just because my friends are into them, and it's a good way to stay connected. You know, a lot of my friends that I went to college with live in St. Louis, and so they're a really easy way to stay connected with folks. I mean, you know that obviously,
yeah,
especially transplanting yourself from one country to another,
yeah. But
boldly calling your place a country.
no,
I won't even
you could
say it out
call it a
loud.
country. I don't think
Hmm.
so. As soon as I left I always call it California. They're pretty similar. Canada has ceased to be real for me.
Yeah, no, it was always a myth for me. So it's good to know that like there are real people there, and they made their exodus. That's good to know.
Yeah. Anyways, though, this is going to be a shorter episode because
Yeah.
it is Thanksgiving, and we all have, and I especially, as you know, have some unfortunate large amount of cooking to do. Um,
You're not just gonna get a Popeye's chicken and slap it on the table.
I actually have a 19-pound turkey from Winco. The closest
Wow.
Popeyes is 90 minutes, or I'd actually consider that.
Wow, I'm
But
proud of you. I'm just
I
making
have to
stuffing.
stuff it. It's like, God, what time is it? It's 7 p.m. on the night before Thanksgiving. I should probably start cooking. But we did hit our goal of about an hour and a half.
No, we crushed it. We got to ramble about Bond stuff. We've been talking about doing
Yes,
this for, I
we
mean, a
should do
couple of years
another.
now. We've been like, hey, we should do this, and then we
Yeah,
just never found each other. So this is really fun.
yes, we should do another before your book comes out.
No, that would be so much fun. I will let you know. We're going to go through the typical process that Headstamp does, where it's launched via Kickstarter. So there'll be a whole campaign. I encourage you guys to buy during that time when it's live, mainly because you get to bully me into doing more work because there'll be Kickstarter goals for like additional sections that I'll be forced to write or guns that we could capture maybe, and they'll all be listed out as additional goals inside of there. That's how they've launched like a lot of their big books that like Ian has written and stuff. So I'll have all that information. I'm really excited to have all that together because I mean this has been a dream for a long time now, and just being able to talk to you guys about it is super exciting. But it's only gonna get more fun from here.
Yes, I'm excited to see it, and you're going to have to let me know how I can help because I'm
Absolutely,
down
brother.
to autistically doodle more things to go in there, or just more.
Consider that
I love text
consider
work
that
so
sold.
much. It is every graphic designer's. I'm
Hmm.
being
It's your
facetious, though.
favorite.
It's my favorite.
We'll get into all the font families, don't you worry. There's plenty for the Bond world. There's 70 years of movies or 60 years of
70
movies.
years of
So,
movies, and we have to do them legally distinct.
uh-huh, that is half the battle.
Yeah. Before we wrap up here, do you have any dad advice for our listeners?
Oh gosh, that's hard. I'm not a dad yet. I am a godfather, and I'm
That
Catholic,
counts.
but I'm
Do
not
you have
that
any animals?
Catholic. I have a dog. I have a dog,
There you go.
but
You're
I don't like to do that whole like that dinkwad thing that our generation does. I hate that acronym even exists. Someone tried to
Dinko.
apply it
I've
to me,
never
and
heard. I've
oh,
never
it's a
heard that.
dual income, no kids with dog.
Ha! I've never
It's
heard
like it makes me violently angry. Someone's like, "Well, you're just one of those." I'm like, "No, I am not. I just bought a house. Give me some breathing room."
that.
But
Yeah.
gosh, I should have known that you were going to ask for dad advice.
We forget sometimes. Unfortunately, this is not one of those times.
No, I think I'll give you a Bond quote. This is my favorite one, and it's Sean Connery. This is what I consider to be my my advice to myself. I say it a lot. Is when he was talking about in an interview becoming James Bond, because you know he was a bodybuilder and he was like a low level actor at the time, and he was trying to figure out how to like play this debonair character and like have all these mannerisms and stuff.
I did
He
not know
said,
Sean Connery was a bodybuilder. That's
"Yeah, he's a
badass.
Scottish bodybuilder." Ian Fleming made fun of him when he got cast. He hated him originally. Actually, he said that he was a brute, an oversized stuntman, and all this. But the producers saw something different. They saw a guy that they said looked dangerous while walking. They said that he looked and acted like he walked like a panther, like a
Yeah.
like a coiled spring ready to strike. But all that to say, he slept in his suits famously. He had to figure out how to kind of like be dangerous but also be well mannered. And he said, I've never had to work so hard to make everything look so easy. And I think that's the magic to Bond. I think that's the magic to being a good person, is to work really, really hard behind the scenes at everything you can do. And if it happens to look easy on the front end to your kids or to whoever else, then great. But that you want everything to look and feel effortless, knowing full well you've put everything you can into it.
Yeah.
Never rest on the laurels.
I like that. I like that a lot. Anyways, everyone, this is Commando Bond, Caleb. Thank you again for coming on. We'll do another episode when your book drops, at least close to it.
Yeah, looking forward to that, brother.
And happy Thanksgiving, anyone. If you're American, anyways. Canadians, I think.
Yeah.
Have one.
Do you guys get to have Thanksgiving up there? Yeah, you get to be thankful for being in America at this point. So kudos to you.
Yes. I think Canadian Thanksgiving isn't quite as big of a deal, and it's on a different date. I think I never really did Thanksgiving growing up.
I watched How I Met Your Mother, and they did say that a few times, but they just did Canada as a recurring gag. So,
dude, remember how weird How You Met Your Mother was? Like, I don't think that show would track these days. I don't think it would make it.
That's why I love it so much. It's definitely, as the kids would say, out of pocket. I try to stay somewhat. It's just a little bit. I mean, Neil Patrick Harris, a very openly gay man playing a womanizer, that alone is awesome. It's
like womanizer.
Hilarious. And then all he does is roast Canada and chant USA all the time.
Yes, based. But like now we just get dog shit like The Big Bang Theory. Dude, I fucking hate that show.
Pseudo-intellectualism is exhausting.
Yeah, it's the worst. Basically every punchline is like, ha, nerd. And like it is like such a lowest common denominator. Fucking if anyone ever tells me that they like it, I automatically judge them. It's like the only people I've ever met that actually unironically like that show are just like mid-wet white women. Yeah, okay, sorry, okay. Yes, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. If you know anyone, happy Thanksgiving with you and yours or your friends or your fucking dog. I don't know. If you know anyone that likes The Big Bang Theory,
tickle
them. Okay, bye.